In the fall of 2021, in a quiet neighborhood outside Seattle, no one went missing, no police reports, no crime scenes, no broken laws, and yet, people were disappearing, not physically, emotionally, socially, psychologically. Marriages collapsed, careers imploded, friend groups turned toxic overnight, and somehow, one man was always nearby when things started to fall apart. His name was Adrian Cole, and what made him dangerous was that he never looked like the villain. If you met Adrian, your guard dropped immediately. Early 40s, soft-spoken, perfect eye contact, that calm, steady voice people instinctively relax around. He had a gift. Within 5 minutes of meeting someone, they felt understood. Within 15 minutes, they were oversharing. Within 30, they were emotionally invested. Adrian never rushed it, because he understood something most people don't: trust built slowly. Breaks silently. Adrian's favorite technique was almost invisible. Psychologists call it mirroring, but Adrian had perfected it into something darker. When you were excited, he leaned forward. When you were upset, his voice softened. When you joked, he smiled half a second later, perfectly timed. Your brain registered one thing: backhand index pointing right, this person is just like me. But Adrian wasn't connecting, he was calibrating. Every facial expression, every tone shift, every emotional reaction was data, and Adrian collected. Adrian's favorite technique was almost invisible. Psychologists call it mirroring, but Adrian had perfected it into something darker. When you were excited, he leaned forward. When you were upset, his voice softened. When you joked, he smiled half a second later, perfectly timed. Your brain registered one thing: backhand index pointing right, this person is just like me. But Adrian wasn't connecting, he was calibrating. Every facial expression, every tone shift, every emotional reaction was data, and Adrian collected. The seed was microscopic, but it was planted. Here's what made Adrian terrifying: he never accused, he never suggested directly, he only created emotional questions. Over the next few weeks, his comments stayed subtle. Tom's been stressed lately. Huh? Long hours can change people sometimes. You two are solid though. Probably nothing. Probably nothing. Those two words did most of the damage. Because the human brain hates unresolved uncertainty, Rachel started watching Tom more closely, not because Adrian told her to, because her own mind began filling in the blanks, exactly as Adrian intended. Just as Rachel began emotionally relying on Adrian's calm presence, he pulled back. Replies got shorter. Texts took longer. In person, he was still polite, just slightly more distant. To most people, this would mean nothing. To the human attachment system, it's gasoline on a fire. Rachel leaned in harder, shared more, confident. Deeper relationship fears. And Adrian listened, quietly expanding his psychological map of, over the next 8 months in the Seattle suburb, 3 couples separated, 2 close friendships imploded, 1 small business partnership collapsed. Multiple people reported sudden anxiety spikes. Adrian was never blamed, because Adrian never pushed, he only nudged. The most dangerous manipulators don't create storms, they adjust the pressure until the storm creates. Dr. Maya Bennett wasn't easy to fool. Clinical psychologist, recently moved into the neighborhood, specialized in behavioral patterns. What caught her attention wasn't the conflicts, it was Adrian's consistency. He was always calm, supportive, neutral. Statistically, that was strange, because in real social networks, true neutrality is rare, especially during emotional conflicts. So Maya started watching him, quietly, carefully, the same way he watched everyone else. At a neighborhood gathering, Maya ran a small experiment. Within Adrian's hearing range, she casually mentioned, "I've been second-guessing a big career decision lately." It wasn't true, it was bait. 3 days later, a mutual acquaintance told her, "Adrian mentioned you might be feeling uncertain about work. Everything okay?" Maya felt her stomach drop. There it was, information redistribution, subtle, plausibly innocent, psychologically disruptive. Adrian wasn't just observing social dynamics. One rainy evening, Maya finally approached him outside the community gym. Water dripped from the roof in slow, rhythmic taps. She kept her tone neutral. "You're very skilled at reading people." Adrian didn't flinch, didn't look surprised. He simply gave that calm half-smile and said, "Most people are easier to predict than they think." That was the moment Maya knew. This wasn't accidental behavior, this was deliberate psychological engineering. Here's what made Adrian truly disturbing: he wasn't doing it for money, not for revenge, not even for obvious control. According to Maya's later behavioral analysis, Adrian displayed traits of high-functioning social manipulation dependency. In simple terms, he got psychological satisfaction from quietly influencing human behavior, not being seen, not being caught, just nudging lives off balance, and watching the ripple effects. If there's one lesson from the Adrian Cole case, it's this: the people who manipulate the best rarely look manipulative. They look calm, understanding, emotionally intelligent, deeply trustworthy. Because real psychological influence doesn't feel like pressure, it feels like comfort. So pay attention if someone in your life learns your fears unusually fast, creates small but persistent doubts, pulls away right when you get emotionally close, somehow stays perfectly neutral in every conflict. After that night in the rain, Dr. Maya Bennett couldn't unsee the pattern. Adrian Cole wasn't loud, he wasn't reckless, he was precise. Maya spent the next 3 weeks doing what she did best: observing, documenting, connecting dots no one else even noticed. She mapped 12 social conflicts in the neighborhood. Every single one had 3 things in common. Adrian had built trust with at least one person involved. Adrian had a private conversation shortly before tensions rose. Adrian remained publicly neutral afterward. It was statistically abnormal, but still not illegal. And that's what made it terrifying. Maya reviewed hours of memory, conversations, and behavioral notes. Adrian followed a near-perfect manipulation cycle. Phase 1, access, gain trust through deep listening. Phase 2, mapping, identify insecurities and relationship stress points. Phase 3, seed planting, introduce subtle, deniable doubt. Phase 4, strategic distance, withdraw slightly to increase emotional dependency. Phase 5, stabilizer role, position himself as the calm, trusted figure during fallout. It wasn't chaos, it was engineering, human engineering. Maya decided to push further. At the next community event, she did something risky. In a small group, within Adrian's hearing range, she deliberately shared a completely false personal insecurity, something emotionally believable, something specific. Then she waited. For days later, it came back to her, not directly, not obviously, but subtly reshaped in someone else's concern-filled question. Adrian had done it again. That was the confirmation she needed. Maya approached him one last time, this time. No rain, no tension in her voice, just quiet certainty. They stood in the parking lot as evening settled over Brookfield Heights. She said calmly, "You don't break people directly, do you?" Adrian studied her for a long moment, then he smiled, not nervous, not defensive, just impressed. His reply was soft enough that anyone walking by would have missed it. "People break themselves. I just help them notice the cracks." Maya felt the chill run down. Adrian don't disappear, they relocate. New city, new circle, new minds to map, and somewhere right now, there's probably another neighborhood, slowly feeling the same invisible pressure. Here's what most people still don't understand: the most effective psychological manipulators don't force control, they create conditions where you unknowingly control yourself. They don't push, they don't threaten, they don't dominate, they listen, they mirror. They plant very small doubts, and let human nature do the rest. So if someone in your life feels almost too emotionally precise, pay attention, because the most dangerous mind games don't feel like games at all. The first thing Maya noticed was the residual behavior. People still reacted as if Adrian were present. Sarah Parker avoided confrontation at work. Even though he was gone, Emily Parker questioned her husband's decisions. Months after Adrian had subtly planted those first doubts, it was as if his influence had embedded itself in their minds. This was no ordinary manipulation, it was architecture of the psyche. Adrian had built invisible structures of doubt and dependency that continued. While the neighborhood tried to recover, Adrian was already somewhere else, a new suburb, a new social circle, but the method remained the same: build trust, gather subtle emotional data, plant doubts, withdraw strategically, reappear as the stabilizing force. And this time, his targets were younger, ambitious professionals who trusted easily, Adrian had perfected the art of appearing harmless while orchestrating chaos. In his new neighborhood, Adrian befriended a group of 3 colleagues: Jessica, an overachieving marketing executive; Mark, a calm but socially anxious analyst; Linda, a meticulous and slightly controlling project manager. Within days, Adrian had observed, Jessica feared failure, Mark feared rejection, Linda feared losing control. With just a few subtle remarks during casual conversations, he began to sow seeds of doubt. Jessica, sometimes it feels like people just overlook the quiet work. Doesn't. Mark, you always seem to second-guess yourself. It must be exhausting. Linda, control is important. But sometimes stepping back can be revealing, don't you think? Each sentence sounded innocuous, each sentence sounded like concern, and yet the impact was psychological dynamite. By the second week, tension had started to rise. Jessica was worried Mark was judging her. Mark felt Linda subtly criticizing him. Linda suspected Jessica of undermining her project. None of them realized Adrian was the invisible thread connecting their insecurities. This is classic dark psychology engineering: not forcing conflict, not taking sides, simply observing and nudging. Humans naturally fill in the gaps. And Adrian had created enough gaps to make people doubt themselves and each other. Adrian's next step was critical: strategic withdrawal. He became less available at group lunches, responded slowly to emails, avoided casual chatter. Humans hate uncertainty, humans crave reassurance. And his subtle absence created psychological tension. Jessica found herself overanalyzing every interaction. Mark's anxiety spiked. Linda began micromanaging to compensate for the perceived imbalance, and Adrian was always quietly watching. Back in Brookfield Heights, Maya had been analyzing Adrian's methods through recorded interviews, social patterns, and accounts from former neighbors. She realized the psychological signature of Adrian's manipulations: trust building, gain emotional access, subtle influence, small remarks, ambiguity, withdrawal, create dependency, information redistribution, move knowledge like invisible chess pieces, reappearance, provide calm and certainty when chaos emerges. This cycle created predictable yet invisible chaos, and Maya noticed something more terrifying. Once Adrian leaves a neighborhood, the chaos doesn't stop, it continues like a ghost, self-perpetuating in his absence. Determined to prove his methods, Maya devised a controlled experiment. She spoke to Jessica, Mark, and Linda separately, planting small psychological probes while pretending to be neutral. Within days, patterns mirrored what Adrian had done. Jessica doubted her decisions at work, Mark questioned his friendships, Linda began micromanaging her team. It was identical to Adrian's method. It proved one terrifying truth: his manipulations transferred through social interaction, even without his physical. By the third week, the effects were unmistakable. Jessica argued with Mark over trivial issues, Linda criticized both of them over minor mistakes. The team's productivity dropped, friends outside work noticed sudden tension. All of this happened without Adrian touching a single decision. This is the essence of dark psychological influence. You don't need to push people, you just create the conditions for them to implode. Maya decided to track Adrian digitally. She found social media posts, subtle interactions, and even hints of his pattern online. Through careful messaging, she confronted him. "You're doing this again, aren't you?" Adrian responded calmly, "I don't do anything. People just reveal themselves when you stay quiet long enough." Maya realized Adrian didn't need proximity to manipulate. Once the psychological architecture was in place, it ran itself. Adrian Cole's genius wasn't in aggression or dominance, it was in subtlety. Build trust, observe, introduce doubt, step back, let the human mind fill in the cracks. This invisible influence left people questioning themselves, their friends, their lovers, and their own decisions long after he was gone. If someone in your life listens too perfectly to your fears, offers vague suggestions instead of opinions, withdraws slightly at key emotional moments, always appears neutral but present, pay attention. Because some of the most dangerous psychological manipulators don't yell, threaten, or dominate, they engineer your mind silently. and the ripple effects can last months or years.